The morning light in the king's solar felt wrong. Too bright, too clean. It poured through the reinforced glass of the new palace domes, cold and merciless, washing the warmth out of the room the late queen had once filled with amber glow. It spread across the mahogany desk like an intruder, revealing everything, even the drifting dust that danced in the air, blind to the history it hovered over. The room hummed with a low, constant vibration that set my teeth on edge. The king had not been here a month before the ancient oak panels were torn open and threaded with hissing copper conduits. The old silence was gone, replaced by the steady, mechanical pulse of the central steam lift. I adjusted my spectacles. My academic robes, once a comfort, now felt like a shroud. In this house of gears and precision, my philosophies seemed as obsolete as a sundial in a room full of chronometers.
Professor Voron, the king said without looking up. He was a stark contrast to his predecessor, the late queen. Her reign had been a 40-year lullaby of mercy. She was a woman of soft edges and a heart perhaps too easily moved by the sight of a tear. Under her rule, the iron had turned to silk, the gallows had become flower trellises, and the nation had basked in a golden, if somewhat stagnant, peace. But the new king was carved from a different wood, something dark, dense, and unyielding, like aged oak. He was younger, his silhouette sharp and predatory in the morning sun. He didn't possess the queen's maternal warmth. Instead, he radiated a cold, restless energy, the kind that sought to mend things that weren't broken and break things that were too soft. He was currently focused on a clockwork bird on his desk, its brass gears whirring with a rhythmic, clinical precision. "Your Majesty," I replied, my voice raspy from years of lecturing on ethics and the metaphysics of the soul. It felt strange to be here, away from the smell of old parchment and the quiet debates of the university. The king finally looked up, his gaze sweeping over my robes with a faint, chilling smirk.
"You look comfortable in that wool, Voron. It suits the persona of a philosopher. But I have spent my nights in the royal archives, reading the ledgers that my aunt tried so hard to burn. I know who you were before she locked the dungeons 40 years ago."
He set the clockwork bird down, its mechanical heart still clicking.
"You are the last of the old masters, Professor, the only one whose hands still remember the weight of the silver needles and the scream of the steam press. My aunt gave this nation 40 years of sleep. I am here to wake it up. And for that, I don't need a lecturer on ethics. I need the man who knows how to stitch a soul to a machine."
"My aunt was a saint, Voron,"
the king continued. His eyes were a pale, piercing grey, reflecting the polished brass of the bird.
"But saints make for poor architects of state. She allowed the populace to grow fat on comfort and thin on discipline. They hide their vices behind lace and tea parties now, thinking that because she shuttered the dungeons, she erased the sin. A nation without a spine cannot stand. It merely slumps."
He reached into a velvet-lined drawer and withdrew an object that seemed to suck the light out of the room. It was a heavy, rusted iron key, its bow shaped like a weeping eye. My heart gave a singular, heavy thud against my ribs. I knew that key. I had felt its cold bite in my palm a lifetime ago. "The Iron Archives," I whispered. The name felt heavy, coated in the dust of 40 years. Those subterranean vaults beneath the old palace had been sealed with lead and prayers since the day of the Queen's coronation, their iron gates left to rust until they became part of the foundation itself.
"The old palace has been silent for too long,"
the king said, sliding the key across the polished wood toward me. The brass was unnervingly clean, as if it had been waiting for this very hand to grasp it.
"And I am not the only one who finds the silence deafening. My companion, the Lady Alara, has a keen interest in the lost arts of your tenure. She finds our current methods of governance to be rather dull. She believes that the soul, much like a diamond, only reveals its true brilliance under immense pressure.
My hands tightened within my sleeves. I knew the name Alara. Everyone in the high circles did. She was a woman of sharp appetites and a capricious cruelty that even the king seemed to struggle to leash. To her, the world was a collection of toys to be disassembled. A chill that had nothing to do with the morning air settled in my marrow. The Iron Archives were not just dungeons. They were a surgical theatre of the spirit, a concubine's curiosity. It was one thing to resurrect the forbidden depths for the sake of the crown. It was quite another to do it for the amusement of a bored mistress. "Your Majesty," I said, my voice steady despite the rising dread. "Once we unseal those doors, we invite the darkness back into Oakhaven. Brutality is a floodgate. Once opened, it is not easily closed. I fear we may be ushering in an age of cruelty that will stain even the finest lace of your court. It will change the very fabric of our morality." The king dismissed my concern with a careless wave of a ring-studded hand.
You overthink it, Professor. That is your academic mind speaking. I am not asking for a massacre. I am asking for refinement. Everything must be conducted with the utmost safety.
He smiled, a thin, sharp expression.
I want the mechanisms restored, the steam calibrated, and the oversight absolute. We must not permanently break our subjects, at least not the ones of value. Treat them as patients in need of a very specific, very rigorous therapy.
He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine.
But be ready for anything, Voron. Some spirits are more stubborn than others, and you must begin immediately. Our guest, young Elian, is proving to be uncooperative. He seems to have forgotten that his presence here is a privilege, not a penance.
The name sent a ripple of unease through me. Elian, the only son and heir of the Duke of the North. He wasn't alone, of course. The new palace was full of such guests. The sons of the Western Marches and the Southern Lords, all kept close to the king's shadow under the guise of royal favour. But Elian was different. He carried the secrets of the Northern Wells in a head that refused to bow.
He sits in the East Wing with the other scions,
the king continued,
playing the part of a courtier by day, but clutching his patents and his pride by night. The Lady Alara has been most patient with him, but even her grace has limits. She believes Elian has a future by her side, and a dowry of oil-rich lands that will fall in the crown's hands. He refused her favor once, thinking his father's distance protected him. Now, he will learn that the distance between the East Wing and the Iron Archives is much shorter than he thinks.
I stared at the key. The king was no longer content with keeping hostages. He was ready to start breaking them.
I want him moved to the old palace under the shroud of night,
the king added coldly.
Let the other dukes think he is simply on a private excursion with the lady. But I want his mind opened, Voron. I want those patents signed before the duke even realizes his son has stopped attending the royal hunt. I want his mind opened, Voron,
the king added, his voice dropping to a low, clinical tone.
But listen carefully. There are to be no permanent scars, no lingering tremors, and absolutely no descent into madness. I need his signature to be legal, and his intellect to remain sharp enough to continue his work under our supervision.
He paused, watching the clockwork bird struggle to find its footing on the desk.
The Lady Alara will breathe down your neck. She is young, and her appetites are impatient. She will push you to go faster, to break him by sunset. Ignore her. If it takes weeks to peel back the layers of his resolve without snapping the cord, then let it take weeks. As long as Elian remains within these walls, the North remains paralyzed. We have all the time in the world, and I would rather have a slow victory than a fast disaster.
The king's gaze met mine, cold and absolute.
We shall see how she handles the delay. But you, Professor, you make sure that when he finally walks out of those archives, he does so as a willing servant of the crown, with his mind as clear as a winter morning, not a shattered relic.
I bowed, the weight of the key now feeling like a surgical scalpel. It wasn't just about pain anymore. It was about the delicate, terrifying art of psychological reconstruction.